Hello, Book 2. My name's Alan. Welcome to my channel. As part of Nonfiction November, I read Selected Letters of William Faulkner by Joseph Blotner. It's an older book. It's from 1977, but he's written several other books on Faulkner too, and a biography that I'd like to read. But this book does read like a biography. It has letters from, 1918 all the way through to 4 days before his death in 1962 of a heart attack at age 64. And there's it inserts in between the letters that give you, they're kind of like notes and that. But it starts off with him going to the Royal Air Force in Canada. And already from an early age, he was starting to tell tall tales about that he was in a plane crash, that he saw like action. He never made it out of Canada, but I don't know if they really made it into the official biography, Faulkner, but he told the tales in letters, to be sure. It also, early on in the early 20s, 1924, 25, he was in Europe, in France, Paris primarily. He really liked Paris and wrote letters back to his mom and his brother and friends on, just like I would write too, about what I'm eating and how the culture is different and how the kids, they treat the children like adults, and how when the waiter comes, they don't bring a check or anything, they just come and you're expected to tell them what you had to eat on the honor system. And he really appreciated that. And his escapades with drinking. Then there's, he visited the Louvre. Faulkner mentions his love of Picasso, Cézanne, Matisse, Rodin's The Thinker. Unfortunately, there's no illustrations in here because Faulkner loved to draw and paint throughout his life. But in his letters, he would draw these little caricatures of his. Like for one, several letters to his aunt and to his mother, he grew a beard for the first time. And he talks about how the beard's coming in pretty well, but let me just read it to you. The beard's coming in pretty well, but his aunt would be able to see the boy he used to be, or something like that. He's also starting to get into debt over to his agent. He started to borrow money in 1927. He's been publishing. He had a book of poetry out. He's working on Flags in the Dust. He had like the first novels out. But here's a story to Horace Liveright, 1927. Thanks very much for the favor. He loaned him some money. I'm sorry it's not possible to give you warning, but it was a case of dire necessity. It's quite a yarn. I had just purchased 25 gallons of whiskey, brought it home and buried it in the garden. 2 days later, I went to Memphis, lost over $300 on a wheel, and gave a check for it. I had about $150 in the bank, and I knew I could dispose of my whiskey and raise the balance with only a minor risk of being had by the law for peddling it. So I came home in about 3 days, found that one of the N-words had smelled the whiskey out, dug it up, sold a little, and had been caught and told where the rest of it was, so I lost it all. I had to have the money to meet my check. And so it starts out like for $500, then $1,000, and as he gets more successful, and Faulkner also owned a farm and farmed it. Not to great success, but he had cotton and horses and that in a farm. But then these loans where he was drawing like $10,000, $50,000, and trying to make ends meet. And it's funny to read the letters, how they progress like that. Excuse me for going back to my notes in the book, but I can't remember all of the details. Yeah, he signed his letters Billy back then, B-I-L-L-Y. And he always was known to sign him Bill. Now, here's the part that I liked about him trying to decide what to title Intruders in the Dust. He's thinking, my beard is getting along quite well. Van laughed at it because she could see right through it to the little boy I used to be. He talks about different ideas for titles of his books. For example, Imposer in the Dust, Sleeper in the Dust, Malfeasance in the Dust, and then he finally selects Intruder in the Dust, luckily the best one. To Malcolm Crowley, October 1945, he's talking about the mistakes in figures and The Sound and the Fury. Let me just read part of that. Jason would call $2,840.50 $3,000 at any time the sum was owed to him. He would have particularized only when he owed the money. He would have liked to tell the police she stole $15,000 from him, but did not dare. He didn't want the money recovered because then the fact that he had stolen $4,000 from the thief would have come out. He was simply trying to persuade anyone with the power, to catch her long enough for him to get his hands on her. Crowley had said he was confused about the money in The Sound and the Fury, and we just did that in Faulkner in August 2020. And you'll remember that section 3, all the money, and Quentin stole the money and that. There's letters when he was in Hollywood to his brother James, letters to his agents and friends. Malcolm Crowley, who was his friend and a drinking partner, and he's the editor of the Portable Faulkner. And Malcolm Crowley was one to suggest that Faulkner write an appendix to The Sound and the Fury. And I, for one, am glad he did. But he's also the author of Under the Volcano, which I've seen the movie of, and it's a wild movie. I'd like to read the book. Maybe I will next year. It's interesting, he talks about the sequel to Sanctuary, which we'll be reading Faulkner in August 2021, next August. We're reading Sanctuary, but the sequel to that is Requiem for a Nun, which I have not read. And he almost wrote a play for that. Hollywood was, or one of his agents rather, was trying to talk him into writing a play. That would have been interesting. But I mention that because there was a amateur production of a play that he gave permission for. Let me just read from that. I think he went back and forth with this woman giving her permission and for free, just because it was in Memphis, this Valerie Bettis. Dear Miss Bettis, remain calm. You have a letter bearing my permission to use the material non-commercially. You now have two. I have written to Mr. Ober today, sending him a copy of this. He is not only my agent, but a good friend. He was merely protecting me. Now, if this should show a profit, I would be happy to have 5%, but don't bother about that until it does, if or when. So he's very generous. Actually, it was not a play, it was a ballet. Can you imagine? Light in August as a ballet. Now, with his farm, and he worked it, he took care of his mother's expenses for years. Now, his mother thought she was living like on $11 a week or something like that. And Faulkner would pay for her insurance and her medical expenses. And his brother said something one time, and he's really upset. There's parts in here where Faulkner gets upset. It is pretty funny too, with his brother in particular. He mentions Ulysses and James Joyce several times in here, and his love and respect for Ulysses that I liked. And he also talks about Hemingway in here too. Now, I know they corresponded, but there's only a few examples of letters from Hemingway in here, and I'll read those in a second. Because Hemingway took things that Faulkner said totally the wrong way. Yeah, when Faulkner was, he taught a few classes at the University of Mississippi, and he said, the statement, as you re-quoted, is not correct because apparently it was incomplete as you saw it. And in its original shape, It had no reference whatsoever to Hemingway as a man, only to his craftsmanship as a writer. I know of his record in 2 wars and in Spain too. In April, on request from the English department of the University of Mississippi here, my alma mater, I met 6 English classes answering questions about literature, writing, and in one of them I was asked to rate the greatest American writers. I answered that I wouldn't attempt it since I believed no man could, but after further insistence, I would give only my personal rating of my own covals. The men whose names are most often connected with mine since we began to write. I named Hemingway, Woolf, DePassos, Caldwell. I said, I think we're all failed, and that none of us have had yet the stature of Dickens, Dostoevsky, Balzac, Thackeray, etc., that Woolf made the best failure because he had the most courage to risk being guilty of bad taste, clumsiness, mawkishness, dullness, to shoot the works, win or lose, and damn the torpedoes. That DePassos was next since he sacrificed some of the courage to style. That Hemingway was next since he did not have the courage to get out on a limb as the others did, to risk bad taste, overwriting, dullness, etc. This was elaborated, of course. I spoke extemporaneously without notes, as I believed at the time, informally, not for publication. Your letter was first intimidated that it had been released, and from what you requoted, garbled and incomplete. I'm sorry of it. A copy of this goes to Hemingway with a covering note. Whenever other chances I have to correct it, I shall certainly take. Thank you for your letter. Sincerely, William Faulkner. And then he wrote to Hemingway. Dear Hemingway, this is 28 June 1947 from Oxford. Dear Hemingway, I'm sorry of this damn stupid thing. I was just making $250, I thought informally, not for publication, or I would have insisted on looking at the stuff before it was released. I have believed for years that the human voice has called all human ills, and I thought I had broken myself of talking. Maybe this will be my valedictory lesson. I hope it won't matter a damn to you, but if or when or whatever it does, please accept another squirm from yours truly, Faulkner. So Hemingway thought Faulkner said he didn't have any courage. When he said he doesn't have the courage to go out on a limb and risk bad taste, overwriting, dullness. He's giving him a backhanded compliment, actually. And let me find this other one where Hemingway takes it totally wrong. He talks about how at first Go Down Moses came out with the cover of Go Down Moses and Other Stories, and he had to correct that. He goes, no, it's not a collection of stories, it's a novel, it's a novel. To Malcolm Crowley, Friday, 11 February, 1949. Dear Malcolm, I saw your Life magazine article with your Hemingway piece. I didn't read it, but I know it's all right, or you wouldn't have put your name on it. For which reason I know Hemingway thinks it's all right, and I hope it will profit him. If there is any profit or increase or increasement that a brave man and an artist can lack or need or want. So you can see his great respect for Hemingway. Here's when he was, they were talking about the Nobel Prize. To Joan Williams, 22 February 1950, Oxford. I don't know anything about the Nobel matter. Been hearing rumors for about 3 years. Have been a little fearful. It's not the sort of thing to decline, a gratuitous insult to do so, but I don't want it. I'd rather be in the same pigeonhole with Dreiser and Sherwood Anderson than with Sinclair Lewis and Miss China Hand Buck, Pearl S. Buck. I've got the first act laid out. Okay, the Nobel Prize for Literature had been awarded to Sinclair Lewis for 1930 and to Pearl S. Buck in 1938. Of course, Faulkner did accept the Nobel Prize. I'll end with this. After I'll show you one of his handwritten letters that they have a copy of. In 1950, in the wake of criticism which had greeted the serial publication of Ernest Hemingway's Across the River and Into the Trees, Evelyn Maugh had written the editor of Time attacking the critics who had panned the book. Faulkner then wrote the editor applauding Ma and added in his own defense of Hemingway in a letter which appeared on 13 November 1950. On Faulkner's return from France in June 1952, his friend Harvey Brewitt, the New York Times Book Review, asked him if he would review Hemingway's new novella, The Old Man and the Sea. Faulkner said that he would not know how to do a review, but took the book to Mississippi with him. There he wrote a statement which embodied ideas and phrases from his earlier letter and sent it to Sachs Commons to forward to Brett. 20 June 1952. A few years ago, I forgot what the occasion was, but Hemingway said that writers should stick together just as doctors, lawyers, and wolves do. I think it's more wit in it than truth or necessity either, at least in Hemingway's case, since the sort of writers who need to band together, willy-nilly or perish, resemble the wolves, who are wolves only in pack, and singly are just another dog. Because the man who wrote Men Without Women, Pieces, and The Sun Also Rises, and A Farewell to Arms, and For Whom the Bell Tolls, who Faulkner wrote the screenplay for, which Bogart and Lauren Bacall starred in. Is that right? Or is it, I think that's right. I'll have to check that. He wrote a screenplay to one of Hemingway's novels. No, it's not To Whom the Bell Tolls. It's the one with, they're on the water. Oh, what is that? Oh, I'm sorry, I digress. And most of the African stuff and most of all the rest of it is not one of these and needs no pack protection. So he does not need even this from another writer. Maybe he doesn't even want it. So he gets it for free from one who, regardless of how he rated what remained, has never doubted the integrity of it, and who has always affirmed that no man will be quicker and harsher to judge what remained than the man who wrote Men Without Women, and The Sun Also Rises, and A Farewell to Arms, and For Whom the Bell Tolls, and the best of the African stuff, and the most of the rest of it. And that if even what remained had not been as honest and true as he could make it, then he himself would be burned the manuscript before the publisher ever saw it. William Faulkner. Now, this Harvey Brewitt passed Faulkner's letter on to Hemingway, telling him that he had planned to use it in a piece of his writing. To his dismay, the letter made Hemingway furious, as he concluded that Faulkner was calling him just another dog. Like wolves in the pack. So Hemingway just took it all the wrong way. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this. When Hemingway did, he was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for fiction for The Old Man and the Sea, Faulkner sent him a telegram, May 1953. Splendid news, stop. Not that, quote, the old man, unquote, needs more accolade than it already has from us, who know the anguish it took and have tried to do it too. Signed, Bill Faulkner. And here's what his handwriting kind of looked like. He's talking about the Hamlet in this letter. But, so I wish it included more examples like this, you know, of his handwriting, and especially, like I mentioned, before he wrote all kinds of, or drew all kinds of pen and ink drawings and characters, cartoonish things of himself and his beard, and I wish it had more of that. But I really did like this book, and you know, I probably wouldn't have read it if it weren't for Nonfiction November. So thank you for that. So I'll talk to you later. Thanks for your time and your indulgence.